is encased in this cardboard sleeve. I'm not exactly sure what you'd call it, but it makes for some wonderful tapping sounds. So before we get into it, I thought we could do some of that. It's beautiful. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it's got this beautiful design, very detailed. The complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. So, Edgar Allan Poe himself could have a video on his own. He lived a very fascinating and mysterious life, and this was ended by a mysterious and tragic death, so I would love to do a video about him. But for now, if you are not aware of Edgar Allan Poe, I will read you the back of this so that you can get an idea. Edgar Allan Poe, who lived from 1809 to 1849, is one of America's greatest and best-loved writers. Known as the father of the detective story, Poe is perhaps most famous for his short stories, particularly his shrewd mysteries and chilling, often grotesque tales of horror, but he was also an extremely accomplished poet and a tough literary critic. Poe's life was not far removed from the drama of his fictions. Orphaned at a young age, he was raised by a foster family. As a young man, he developed problems with gambling, debts, and alcohol, and was even dismissed from the army. His love life was marked by tragedy and heartbreak. Despite these difficulties, Poe produced many works now considered essential to the American literary canon, including the stories The Telltale Heart, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Murders in the Rue Morgue, as well as classic poems such as The Raven, Annabel Lee, and The Bells. The complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe includes all of Poe's spine-chilling short stories and melodious poems, as well as literary criticism, essays, and his only full-length novel, The Narrative of A. Gordon Pym. In addition, noted historian and biographer Daniel Stajauer provides a compelling introduction to this collectible edition. So, I thought I could read you a short story and perhaps a poem. So I'll take it out of its case. And here we have this beautiful book, which has the same detailing, but in this glorious yellow color. And it's kind of a satiny fabric. It sort of has a sheen to it. It's very beautiful. Very beautiful. For anybody wondering, I believe I got this book from Book Depository. It is just starting to rain outside, so if you hear some pitter patter, pitter patter, pitter patter sounds, that's what that is. So like I said, I think I got this from Book Depository, and I will link it below. I did get it quite some time ago, so I'm not sure if they'll still sell it. And to be honest, I haven't really tackled this book. I've read bits and pieces here and there, but certainly haven't read the whole thing. So let's take a look. So now the question the sounds that books make, but I also love that good book smell. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? I'm sure any book lover does. I actually worked as a librarian for a year last year, so I was lucky enough to be surrounded by books. I wish I read more than I do though. Funnily enough, working at a library, literally as a librarian, although my title wasn't actually called that, but I didn't find that I necessarily read any more. The times when I most wanted to read was while I was working, and I'd be shelving books and I'd see one that looked intriguing to me, and I'd pick it up and read the back and think, oh, I'm just gonna read a page or two. I'd look around to make sure there were no customers, no patrons I suppose, and that my boss wasn't around, and then I'd take a quick read. But then I always found that was when I wanted to read the most. Sometimes I would get the books out and then I'd get home, and then by the time I got home I'd just want to slump on the couch. I have a lot of stories from working at the library. It sounds like the most relaxing, chill job there is, and I would definitely do it again. But it involved a lot more than just books. I'll say that much. It involved a lot more than just the books, or just the people who liked books. Because I was excited to see, mainly people who liked books, that would be my customer base, the people I was assisting, but it was actually more about the technology and helping people on the computer do all sorts of things, and it really wasn't about the books most of the time. But anyway, if you guys want to hear some of my stories from there, because I have some crazy ones, if you can believe it. Just typical crazy customer service stories. I can definitely do a video on that. I don't know how interesting it would be to you guys. But anyway, major sidetrack there. I remember I read one story in this book. What was it? The Sphinx. It was the Sphinx. And I really enjoyed it. I will admit, just due to the nature that his work was written in the 1800s, some of the words I don't necessarily understand or know how to pronounce, but I hope that doesn't put you off too much. So I think we'll read the Sphinx, because it's a nice and short one that I can get through in a video. Not that it really matters how long I ramble on for an ASMR, because hopefully this is just the soundtrack to your relaxation or getting to sleep. Okay, we made it. The Sphinx. During the dread reign of cholera in New York, I had accepted the invitation of a relative to spend a fortnight with him in the retirement of his cottage ornée on the banks of the Hudson. We had here around us all the ordinary means of summer amusement, and what with rambling in the woods, sketching, boating, fishing, bathing, music, and books, we should have passed the time pleasantly enough, but for the fearful intelligence which reached us every morning from the populous city. Not a day elapsed which did not bring us news of the decease of some acquaintance. Then, as the fatality increased, we learned to expect daily the loss of some friend. At length we trembled at the approach of every messenger. The very air from the south seemed to us redolent with the death. That palsying thought, indeed, took entire possession of my soul. I could neither speak, think, nor dream of anything else. My host was of a less excitable temperament, and although greatly depressed in spirits, exerted himself to sustain my own. His richly philosophical intellect was not at any time affected by unrealities. To the was sufficiently alive, but of its shadows he had no apprehension. If you guys can hear that irritating tapping sound every now and then, I think it might be a bird on the roof of my caravan, but I'm not 100% sure. I thought it was my dog, so I went and put him inside, but it wasn't him, obviously, because it's still bloody here. I actually read this, I think, before the pandemic really hit, and now that I'm reading it again, I can definitely see the similarities it poses to how, the dread that we all feel. They're obviously talking about cholera, I think I'm saying that right, which isn't COVID-19, but same kind of thing, so probably never a more timely time to read this. But anyway, let's keep going. His endeavours to arouse me from the condition of abnormal gloom into which I had fallen were frustrated in great measure by certain volumes which I had found in his library. These were of a character to force into germination whatever seeds of hereditary superstition lay latent in my bosom. I had been reading these books without his knowledge, and thus he was often at a loss to account for the forcible impressions which had been made upon my fancy. A favourite topic with me was the popular belief in omens, a belief which, at this one epoch of my life, I was almost seriously disposed to defend. On this subject we had long and animated discussions, he maintaining the utter groundlessness of faith in such matters, I contending that a popular sentiment arising with absolute spontaneity, that is to say, without apparent traces of suggestion, had in itself the unmistakable elements of truth, and was entitled to much respect. The fact is that soon after my arrival at the cottage, there had occurred to myself an incident so entirely inexplicable, and which had in it so much of the portentous character, that I might well have been excused for regarding it as an omen. It appalled, and at the same time so confounded and bewildered me, that many days elapsed before I could make up my mind to communicate the circumstance to my friend. Near the close of an exceedingly warm day, I was sitting, book in hand, at an open window, commanding, through a long vista of the river banks, a view of a distant hill, the face of which nearest my position had been denuded by what is termed a landslide of the principal portion of its trees. My thoughts had been long wandering from the volume before me to the gloom and desolation of the neighbouring city. Uplifting my eyes from the page, they fell upon the naked face of the hill, and upon an object, upon some living monster of hideous conformation, which very rapidly made its way from the summit to the bottom, disappearing finally in the dense forest below. As this creature first came in sight, I doubted my own sanity, or at least the evidence of my own eyes, and many minutes passed before I succeeded in convincing myself that I was neither mad nor in a dream. Yet when I described the monster, which I distinctly saw and calmly surveyed through the whole period of its progress, my readers, I fear, will feel more difficulty in being convinced of these points than even I did myself. Estimating the size of the creature by comparison with the diameter of the large trees near which it passed, the few giants of the forest which had escaped the fury of the landslide, I concluded it to be far larger than any ship of the line in existence. I say ship of the line because the shape of the monster suggested the idea. The hull of one about 74s might convey a very tolerable conception of the general outline. The mouth of the animal was situated at the extremity of a proboscis some 60 or 70 feet in length, and about as thick as the body of an ordinary elephant. Near the root of this trunk was an immense quantity of black, shaggy hair, more than could have been supplied by ears of a score of buffaloes, and projecting from this ear downwardly and laterally sprang two gleaming tusks, not unlike those of the wild boar, but of infinitely greater dimension. Extending forward, parallel with the proboscis, and on each side of it was a gigantic staff, 30 or 40 feet in length, formed seemingly of pure crystal, and in shape a perfect prism. It reflected in the most gorgeous manner the rays of the declining sun. The trunk was fashioned like a wedge with the apex to the earth. From it there were outspread two pairs of wings, each wing nearly 100 yards in length, one pair being placed above the other, and all thickly covered with metal scales, each scale apparently some 10 or 12 feet in diameter. I observed that the upper and lower tiers of wings were connected by a strong chain, but the chief peculiarity of this horrible thing was the representation of a death's head, which covered nearly the whole surface of its breast, and which was as accurately traced in glaring white upon the dark ground of the body as if it had been there carefully designed by an artist. While I regarded this terrific animal, and more especially the appearance on its breast, with a feeling of horror and awe, with a sentiment of forthcoming evil which I found it impossible to quell by any effort of the reason, I perceived the huge jaws at the extremity of the proboscis suddenly expand themselves, and from them there proceeded a sound so loud and so expressive of woe that it struck upon my nerves like a knell, and as the monster disappeared at the foot of the hill, I fell at once, fainting to the floor. Upon recovering, my first impulse, of course, was to inform my friend of what I had seen and heard, and I can scarcely explain what feeling of repugnance it was which, in the end, operated to prevent me. At length, one evening, some 3 or 4 days after the occurrence, we were sitting together in the room in which I had seen the apparition, I occupying the same seat at the same window, and he lounging on a sofa near at hand. The association of the place and time impelled me to give him an account of the phenomenon. He heard me to the end, at first laughed heartily, and then lapsed into an excessively grave demeanour, as if my insanity was a thing beyond suspicion. At this instant I again had a distinct view of the monster, to which, with a shout of absolute horror, I now directed his attention. He looked eagerly, but maintained that he saw nothing, although I designated minutely the course of the creature as it made its way down the naked face of the hill. I was now immeasurably alarmed, for I considered the vision either as an omen of my death, or worse, as the forerunner of an attack of mania. I threw myself passionately back on my chair, and for some moments buried my face in my hands. When I uncovered my eyes, the apparition was no longer visible. My host, however, had in some degree resumed the calmness of his demeanour, and questioned me very rigorously in respect of the confirmation of the visionary creature. When I had fully satisfied him on this head, he sighed deeply, as if relieved of some intolerable burden, and went on to talk, with what I thought a cruel calmness, of various points of speculative philosophy, which had heretofore formed a subject of discussion between us. I remember his insisting very especially, among other things, upon the idea that the principal source of error in all human investigations lay in the liability of the understanding to underrate or to overvalue the importance of an object through mere mismeasurement of its propinquity. To estimate properly, for example, he said, the influence to be exercised on mankind at large by the thorough diffusion of democracy, the distance of the epoch at which diffusion may possibly be accomplished, should not fail to form an item in the estimate. Yet can you tell me one writer on the subject of government who has ever thought this particular branch of the subject worthy of discussion at all? He here paused for a moment, stepped to a bookcase, and brought forth one of the ordinary synopses of the natural history. Requesting me then to exchange seats with him, that he might the better distinguish the fine print of the volume, he took my armchair at the window, and opening the book, resumed his discourse very much in the same tone as before. "But for your exceeding minuteness," he said, in describing the monster, "I might never have had it in my power to demonstrate to you what it was. In the first place, let me read to you a schoolboy account of the genus Sphinx, of the family Crepuscularia, of the order Lepidoptera, of the class of Insecta, or insects. The account runs thus. 4 membranous wings covered with little coloured scales of metallic appearance, mouth forming a rolled proboscis, produced by an elongation of the jaws, upon the sides of which are found the rudiments of mandibles and downy palpi, the inferior wings retained to the superior by a stiff hair, antennae in the form of an elongated club, prismatic, abdomen pointed. The death's head Sphinx has occasioned much terror among the vulgar at times by the melancholy kind of cry which it utters, and the insignia of death which it wears upon its corslet." He here closed the book and leaned forward in the chair, placing himself accurately in the position which I had occupied at the moment of beholding the monster. "Ah, here it is," he presently exclaimed. "It is reascending the face of the hill, and a very remarking-looking creature I admit it to be. Still, it is by no means so large or so distant as you had imagined it, for the fact is that, as it wriggles its way up this thread, which some spider has wrought along the window sash, I find it to be about the 16th of an inch in its extreme length, and also about the 16th of an inch distant from the pupil of my eye." So that is the Sphinx by Edgar Allan Poe, and I loved that story because the main character obviously is thinking that he's seeing some monster, and from his perspective and perhaps subconscious bias or subconscious reason for believing in such a monster, he doesn't realize that in fact he is seeing a simple bug. It's just an insect, and it's just a few inches from his face. So while he's thinking he's seeing some enormous monster, he's in fact only seeing a mere insect. And I think it just serves as a good reminder that depending on what perspective you see things from, and also depending on what situation you are in life, for example, the main character had much dread and foreboding feelings of death due to the outbreak of cholera in New York. We can really perceive things incorrectly, or at least not as they really are, or perhaps, worse than they really are. I'm not explaining that very philosophically or with much deeper meaning, but I just really enjoyed that story, and it definitely helps an overthinker like me who overthinks often, not intentionally, but also deals with anxiety, to just remember that we don't always see the truth for what it is. Sometimes our minds trick us and tell us something is much more dangerous or worse or much more terrible than it really is. We don't see the whole picture. It definitely does put things in perspective when you read a story like that, and this was written so long ago. I think it really does portray anxieties and the tricks that our mind plays on us sometimes, and especially in a time like this when we're in a world pandemic, which is a big deal obviously, but I think our anxiety and dread and just foreboding feelings of just negativity can definitely cloud our judgment, so I thought I would share that one. But there are many others in this book that I'm sure are just as good, and I didn't really even link that it would be This book really is enormous, but it's good because it's something that you can just go back to and read one story or one poem, which I quite enjoy. Now, I'm not the best at reading poetry, just in the sense that I don't know how it's meant to be read, if that makes any sense. It's like reading Shakespeare in iambic pentameter. I'm not a pro. Why did I flip to this page? That's not where I was meant to be going. Okay, here we go. A Dream Within a Dream. It's actually shorter than I thought. Perhaps I could read this longer one as well. I wonder if they're all linked. We've got The Sleeper, A Dream Within a Dream, Silence, Dreamland. I mean, I wonder if you're meant to read them together at all, or if they're just ordered by theme or something like that. I don't really know. Okay, let's go for A Dream Within a Dream. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow. You are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream, yet if hope has flown away, in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. Oh God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? Okay, I like that one. Definitely giving me some existential crisis, meaning of life, what is reality, feels, but we love it, we love it. I'm the kind of person who always wants to know, like, what's the symbolism or meaning behind something, and sometimes it's something that I can pick up right away, and other times not so much. But I'm getting sands of time through this verse and just not understanding the meaning, and life is but a dream within a dream. Very interesting. I'm probably going to Google this afterwards and try to see if I can find some deeper analysis of it. I'm just a nerd that way. Hey guys, so as you can probably tell, I am recording this on another day because sadly